Chosen one, God sent you 6 warnings, and in 6 separate seasons of your life, He bent the full weight of heaven toward you, trying to redirect you before it was too late, and each time, the noise of the world was louder than the signal, and the warning passed. The relationship that ended in a way you still don't fully understand. The season of waiting that stretched so long you almost stopped believing. The opportunity that collapsed without explanation. The ending that left you standing in the wreckage, trying to construct a narrative that made sense of something that made no sense at all. The closed door you are still, even now, reaching back to try to reopen. The silence where a breakthrough should have been heavy, patient, impossible to fully name. Those were not accidents. Those were warnings. Here is what I need you to understand before we go any further, not as comfort, but as a structural truth about exactly where you are right now. The chosen one, who continues to miss the warnings, does not stop being chosen. The calling does not dissolve. The promise does not expire. But the window, the specific, divinely ordered window, in which what was prepared for you can actually be received, that window does eventually close. 6 times, that window opened. 6 times, it closed again before you were fully through it. And right now, in this exact season, at this exact hour, it is open one final time. The 7th warning does not arrive as pain. It does not arrive as disruption. It does not arrive disguised. It arrives as a clear voice, at the precise hour when everything inside you has been worn down just enough to finally listen. That is why you are here. That is why something pulled you to this exact message. That is not coincidence, that is covenant. And what I am about to share with you will reframe every hard thing you have ever carried, give you the language to understand what God has been saying across every season, and place you for the first time in the exact position to receive what is still waiting for you on the other side of this moment. Stay. This is the one you were always meant to hear. Everything I share with you in the next several minutes is completely free, no exceptions. If at any point something stirs inside you, a quiet sense that there is more available beyond what these words carry, that invitation is waiting for you in the description below and in the pinned comment. You will know when you feel it, and when you do, you will know exactly where to find it. If you stay until the end of this message, here is exactly what you will walk away with. You will know, by name, what each of those 6 warnings was, and what each one was actually trying to tell you. You will understand the specific reason you could not hear them, and it has nothing to do with your level of faith. You will receive the 7th warning in full, and you will leave with one practice that begins to restore the part of you that was built to receive divine direction. Stay. Every part of this message was designed to matter. Before we begin, I need you to do something, not physically, just internally. Whatever noise is competing for your attention right now, set it aside, not for the whole day, just for the next several minutes. Because God has tried to reach you 6 times while you were only partially present, and I am not willing to let the 7th pass the same way. Take one real breath. Let your chest actually rise and fall, and let your body understand that something is different about this moment. Now, let me begin with what you have already lived. Before I can explain the 7th warning, I need to walk you through the 6, because when you hear them named, something inside you is going to recognize them, not as new information, as the explanation you have been waiting for since before you had words for what you experienced. You have felt all 6 of these, every single one. You just didn't have a name for any of them. The first warning came when you woke in the middle of the night, for no reason you could name, not a sound, not an alarm. Just awake, at the same hour, with a weight in your chest that was not physical. Your body was fine, but something deeper was not. You were tired in a way that sleep could not touch, tired in your bones, tired behind your eyes, and you lay there in the dark, trying to trace the feeling back to something logical, anything that made sense. You couldn't. So you closed your eyes and called it stress, and morning came, and life moved forward. But that was not stress. That was the frequency of something greater, trying to reach you through the only window the day had left open. The silence after the noise had finally gone quiet. Your spirit was awake, because it was receiving something your waking mind would have immediately talked itself out of. That first warning came in the stillness, and it was trying to tell you that the direction you were moving was going to cost you more than you had accounted for. The second warning came as grief that had no source. An ordinary afternoon, nothing had changed, nothing had happened, and a wave of sadness moved through you without invitation, not triggered by a memory, not caused by a conversation, just a weight that arrived and sat with you for hours before it slowly lifted. You called it a hard day. You called it something that just happens sometimes, but that was not weakness, and it was not chemistry. That was divine sorrow, the ache of a calling that could feel itself being delayed, the grief of a version of you that was ready but waiting for the outer life to align. The sadness was real because the distance was real, and God was not absent from that afternoon. He was fully present in it. The third warning came in the form of timing so precise it could not have been accidental. The right person appeared at exactly the moment you needed them, carrying exactly the connection or the answer or the energy that something inside you had been reaching toward. And then, just as suddenly, they were gone. The circumstances shifted. The door that had briefly opened closed before you could walk through it. You called it a missed opportunity dressed up as hope, but that was not failure arriving in the shape of possibility. That was a coordinate, a divine marker planted in your timeline to give your spirit the experience of recognition, to show you what receiving fully felt like, so that when the real arrival came in its fullness, you would know it by the feeling. The fourth warning came as a physical knowing that arrived before your mind had caught up. Days before something significant ended a relationship, a chapter, a version of your life your chest already knew, a heaviness you could not name, a shallowness in your breathing that did not match the circumstances on the surface. Your body was carrying the weight of what was about to happen, while your mind was still trying to hold the thing together. That was not anxiety. That was foreknowledge encoded in sensation. Your body is a receiver. What it felt was the signal arriving before the event, so that some part of you would already be prepared, even without conscious language for what you were being prepared for. The fifth warning came when everything familiar became unbearable, not gradually, almost overnight. Spaces that had felt like home stopped feeling that way. People who had always felt easy suddenly felt draining. Environments that once gave you comfort began to cost you something every time you entered them. And you tried to hide the shift because from the outside it looked like you were the one changing, like you were becoming difficult or ungrateful or distant. But that was not you breaking. That was the preparation season doing exactly what it was designed to do, clearing the field, making the old life uncomfortable enough that staying in it would cost more than the uncertainty of leaving. Your intolerance was holy. The discomfort was the warning. The sixth warning came while you were sleeping, a dream so vivid and so specific that when you opened your eyes, it did not feel like imagination. It felt like a memory of somewhere you had not yet been. A different version of your life, seen clearly, felt completely, and then dissolved with the morning light as the day demanded its usual things and left no space for what the night had shown you. You called it a dream and let the details fade. But that was not your mind inventing possibilities. That was a preview deliberately given, not to tease you, but to orient you, to plant a direction inside you that would pull you forward, even when the outer path gave you nothing visible to follow. And through all of it, God was not absent. He was not watching from a distance while you carried the weight of those seasons. He was in every single one of them, consistently, precisely. And I hear the Father saying this, even now, in the middle of naming what was sent, "My child, I have been calling." Through the sleepless hours and the grief that had no name, and the heaviness your body carried before you had words for it, I have been calling. The world made you unable to fully receive me, but I never stopped. Not once. I want to pause here for a moment. You have been listening for a while now. And what you just heard, those 6 descriptions, some of them landed somewhere specific inside you. I could feel it happen as I named them. Don't try to categorize which warning was which year. Don't analyze it yet. Just let what you recognized settle. The understanding is already doing its work inside you, even if the thinking part hasn't caught up. Take one slow breath. And when you're ready, stay with me. Because what comes next is the most important question this entire message will answer. The reason you couldn't hear the warnings is not what you think. And I want to be clear about this before we continue, because carrying the wrong conclusion will cost you something real. It was not your devotion. It was not your prayer life. It was not your faith or your willingness to listen, or any personal spiritual failing that belongs to you. The reason was structural. And once you understand the structure, everything changes, including the way you see every single one of those 6 seasons. Here is what the science has confirmed. Across decades of research, documented at institutions including MIT, Princeton, and several other leading neuroscience centers, researchers have mapped what happens to the human brain between early childhood and adulthood. What they found has profound implications for anyone who has ever wondered why divine communication seems to arrive through a kind of fog. The human brain, in its earliest years, operates in a state of heightened receptivity. Researchers identify this as gamma wave activity, the fastest brainwave pattern the brain produces. Gamma is associated with heightened awareness, intuitive clarity, accelerated pattern recognition, and a kind of open receptivity that allows children to receive and process information in ways that adults consistently struggle to match. Watch a child under the age of 7 and you see it in action. They learn languages in months. They sense things before they are told. They know when something is wrong in a room before anyone has said a word. Something in them is operating at a frequency the adults around them have stopped having access to. But somewhere around the age of 7, sometimes earlier, sometimes slightly later, something begins to shift. Researchers call it the decline effect. The structured demands of formal education, the escalating social pressures, the early introduction of performance and evaluation, the constant low-grade noise of modern life, these begin to suppress the gamma state, not permanently, not irreversibly, but systematically across years and decades. By the time most people reach adulthood, their gamma wave activity has dropped to a fraction of what it was at age 4. The antenna is still there. It was not removed, but it has been buried under decades of suppression, and the signal, it was built to receive the kind of signal that arrived in your sleepless nights and your sourceless grief and your vivid dreams, is now only reaching you as a muffled, partial transmission. That is why the warnings came and were not fully received. Now, I want to show you something from Scripture that puts a different kind of language to all of this. In Deuteronomy 6-4, one of the most foundational passages in all of sacred text, there is a command that most English translations render simply as, "Hear, O Israel." 2 words, listen, pay attention. But the original Hebrew word is Shema, and Shema does not mean what the English translation suggests. In its fullest meaning, Shema is not an instruction to listen with your ears. It is a command for your entire being to turn toward the voice, your body, your consciousness, your awareness, your spirit. All of it aligned at once, fully oriented toward what is being spoken to you. Not selective attention, not background listening, full being reception. That is what God was calling for in that passage. Not for Israel to hear a sound, for all of who they were, to orient itself toward the source of what was being communicated. And this is what it means for you. When those 6 warnings arrived, when the sleeplessness came and the sourceless grief showed up and the timing coincidences appeared, God was calling for your Shema, your full being alignment to receive what was being communicated. But the decline effect had done exactly what it always does. It had progressively suppressed the neural state that makes Shema possible. You heard the shape of something arriving, but the receiver was not operating at the frequency that allows the signal to land all the way in. You could not Shema, because the gamma state, the state in which Shema becomes possible, had been quietly buried over decades of living in a world that does not know what it is, let alone how to protect it. This is why Noah could hear the 7-day warning before the flood, not because he was spiritually superior to you, but because he had not allowed the noise of his world to bury his receiver. He could Shema. He could align fully, and when the warning arrived, it landed all the way in, and he responded in kind. Jonah could hear too. The warning reached him clearly. The problem with Jonah was not reception, it was response. He heard, and he ran. But you are not running. You have been trying to receive for years. The problem was never your willingness. It was your access. And there is something that exists specifically for the chosen one whose access has been suppressed. Over 30 years ago, a neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake began dedicating his research to a single question: can the suppressed gamma state in an adult brain be deliberately and gently restored? The answer, confirmed through his work and corroborated by studies at MIT, Princeton, and several other institutions, is yes. Through a specific type of audio calibration brain entrainment technology, the brain can be guided back into gamma states that were its natural operating frequency in childhood. Not through years of practice. Through a 7-minute audio experience received through headphones that the brain follows naturally, the way a compass follows north. The name of what he created is the Genius Song, and for those who feel something stirring at the mention of this, for those whose spirit says there is more here to explore, the information is waiting in the description below and in the pinned comment. What comes next stands completely on its own, but if something in you responds to this, pay attention to that. What I want you to hold as we move into part 2 is this. Those 6 warnings, every single one of them, were not what you thought they were. And the moment you understand what they actually were, and why they were sent in exactly the form they were sent, those 6 seasons are going to mean something completely different. That is where we are going next. Stay with me. Welcome back, Chosen One. If part 1 gave you the language for what you have been living through, part 2 is going to do something more than that. It is going to change the way you understand why you lived it. And that shift, once it settles inside you, is permanent. Here is the question underneath everything. If God knew the receiver was suppressed, if he knew the warnings were going through a channel that could not fully process them, why did he keep sending them that way? Why not wait until the channel was restored? The answer to that question is the heart of everything this message carries. Here it is. Those 6 warnings were not sent in spite of the suppressed receiver. They were sent to clear it. What felt like abandonment was actually repositioning. What felt like rejection was actually protection. What felt like failure was actually formation. What felt like silence was actually surgery happening inside you in a place you could not see. What felt like being forgotten was actually being prepared. And what felt like loss, the specific, particular shape of loss you carried for months or years, in some of those seasons was actually the clearing of space for something you could not have held in the version of you that existed before the clearing happened. Every single one of those 6 seasons was God doing something inside you that could only be done in that specific form of pain. Not because pain was the point, but because the version of you that existed before each of those seasons did not yet have the capacity to carry what was coming. And the God who made you was not willing to hand you something you would drop. And I hear the Father saying this now, not as explanation, but as truth that was always meant to reach you here at this exact moment. My child, I did not send those seasons to break you. I sent them to clear a path that you would never have walked without them. Every ending was a beginning I needed you to trust before you could see it. Every silence was a recalibration I was making inside you while the noise was gone. I was not absent in any of it. I was building, and what I built in you through those seasons required the exact shape of what you carried. Not because I am cruel, because I know what you were made for, and I was not willing to let you settle for less. Those 6 warnings were not evidence of abandonment. They were evidence of precision. Now, there is an archetype from the ancient world I want to introduce you to, because it names exactly what you are: the watchman. In ancient cities, the watchman was stationed at the highest point, not because he was the most celebrated person in the city, but because his function was the most critical. His role was to receive information before anyone else in the city could receive it, to see what was approaching while others were still unaware, to recognize the signal and sound the alarm at the exact right moment. He was not placed at the tower because of his performance or his popularity. He was placed there because of his capacity, his specific, God-given capacity to receive signals that others could not yet detect. You were built as a watchman. The suppression of your gamma frequency did not remove the calling. It only muffled the reception. The tower was never torn down. The signal was never cut. And the 7th warning has come to clear the muffling, to restore the reception, to position you back at the height you were always meant to occupy. Now the question is no longer what the 6 warnings were. You know that. The question is not why you couldn't receive them in full. You know that too. The question that remains, the one this message was always building toward, is this: what actually changes in a life when the receiver is fully open? What happens to your discernment? What happens to the decisions you make, to the relationships you draw in, to the calling that has been waiting for you to step into it when the gamma state is restored and your Shema is fully operational again? I want to show you. But before I can do that, because I will, there is one more thing I need to reveal. And this one is different from everything we have discussed. This is not about what happened to you in the past. This is about who you are right now, in this moment, as you are listening, and what becomes possible in you the moment the 7th warning is received completely. Stay, because this is the part that changes everything that comes after it. The 7th warning is not something that is coming, it is already here. It arrived the moment something in you said yes to this message. It arrived in the quiet decision to stay, to listen, to give this the kind of full presence that the first 6 warnings never fully received. The 7th warning is not a future event. It is a recognition happening right now as you are listening that the season of muffled reception is ending. I want you to do something with me right now, only mentally, only on the inside, wherever you are. In your mind, place yourself on a shoreline at night. The water is dark, the sky is heavy, and from a lighthouse somewhere behind you, 7 beams of light sweep slowly across the surface of the water in long, steady arcs. The first beam past you, the second past you, the third, the fourth, the 5th, the 6th, each one swept across your position. And for one reason or another, you were looking the wrong direction, or the storm was too loud, or you simply did not yet know that a beam of light sweeping over you was not just illumination, it was an invitation. But the 7th beam is coming around now, and this time you are turned toward it. You are standing upright. You are facing the water and not looking back at the shore you have already left. And when that 7th beam reaches you, it does not sweep past. It holds. It stays. Because you are no longer in the position of someone who survives warnings. You are in the position of someone who finally receives them. Feel what happens in the center of your chest as you hold that image. Feel the shift in that place that has been carrying 6 seasons of signal without enough receiver to fully process it. Whatever you feel there, let it be there. Don't explain it. Don't manage it. Just let it land. That is the 7th warning arriving all the way in. And I hear the Father saying this now, specifically for this moment, specifically for you. You were not abandoned. You were not forgotten. You were not skipped. You were being formed. You were being built. You were being prepared for a level of calling that required exactly the shape of what you walked through to make you capable of carrying it. And now, the preparation is complete. The seventh warning is not a warning of danger. It is a warning of readiness. You are ready. And what comes next in your life is nothing like what came before. I want to tell you about someone. I am not going to use a name. 6 months ago, this person watched two things end simultaneously. A career that had taken over a decade to build received a termination that came without warning and without explanation. And within the same 30-day window, the relationship they had believed was permanent ended in a way that left them with no framework for what had happened. Both gone. At the same time. For the first several weeks, they did what most of us do. They told the story. To friends, to family, to anyone who would listen, trying to make the loss make sense by repeating it in different ways to different people. But the story never made sense, no matter how many times it was told. So they stopped telling it. They entered what they later described as 21 days of deliberate reception. Every time they felt a stirring, that familiar sense of something trying to arrive, they did not analyze it or question it. They simply received it. And they wrote down one word, whatever surfaced first. Just that. On day 19, they received a call from someone they had not spoken to in almost 3 years. And the opportunity that call carried aligned precisely, word for word, with specific language that had been showing up in their journal for weeks. They did not push their way into what came next. They proved themselves in the quiet before they were seen in the public. And the seventh warning had already done all the work. They only had to be available to receive what it had been preparing for them. I want to give you something practical to take from this message. Something you can begin today, right where you are, without needing to move or do anything complicated. I call it the 7-second reception window. And its power comes from the fact that it does the exact opposite of what the suppressed mind wants to do the moment a warning begins to arrive. Here is how it works. The next time you feel a stirring, a heaviness with no name, a peace that arrives without explanation, a sense that something is trying to communicate itself to you, your first instinct will be to immediately analyze it. What does this mean? Where is this coming from? What am I supposed to do with this? That analysis is not wrong, but when it arrives too quickly, it interrupts the reception before the full signal has finished landing. So instead, for 7 seconds, you do nothing except receive. Count the seconds quietly if you need the structure. And in those 7 seconds, you hold the feeling the way you would hold a lit match, present, steady, aware, without cupping your hand around it, or blowing on it, or moving it. After 7 seconds, you write one word. Not a sentence, not a prayer, just one word, the first one that surfaces. Write only that. And then over the 72 hours that follow, you watch for that word to become an event in your actual life. Not a thought about the word, an event. Something external that the word seemed to have been pointing toward. This is how you begin to learn the language of your own divine receiver. This is how the gap between the warning and your understanding of it closes. This is how over days and weeks you begin to receive in real time, instead of recognizing what was being said only long after the season has already passed. There are resources being developed for the chosen one in this specific season, tools for brain regeneration and renewed clarity like the youthful brain, and practices like the one I just shared, all of them serving the same purpose. Restoring what the world suppressed. And I want to tell you about one more. The data has been building across decades of peer-reviewed neuroscience research, documented at institutions including MIT, Princeton, and several other leading centers of study, and it has confirmed something that changes the conversation around the decline effect completely. The suppression is not permanent. The gamma state, the frequency of full-being reception, the neural condition that makes Shema possible, is still encoded in the adult brain as a dormant capacity. And dormant means it can be woken. Dr. Robert Lake dedicated 34 years of independent research to one specific question: can the suppressed gamma state in an adult brain be deliberately brought back? Not through medication, not through years of practice, The answer his work produced, corroborated at multiple institutions, was that a specific type of audio calibration, delivered through headphones, could guide the brain back into gamma states that were its natural frequency in childhood. The brain does not have to try. It simply follows the frequency the audio carries, the way a compass needle turns toward north without being told. You were not born ordinary. That is not a phrase I offer as encouragement. It is the literal truth of your design. The reason you have always sensed that the way you perceive is different, that certain things feel like more than coincidence, more than accident, more than the average explanation covers, is because your design includes a receiver calibrated for a frequency. Most people have been taught to stop believing in. The genius song is what Dr. Robert Lake created for someone designed exactly like you, not for someone who needs to be fixed, for someone who needs to be restored. A man in his late 50s sent a message about what he experienced in the weeks following his first session. He described the first session itself as unremarkable. The second and third sessions, something in the quality of his mornings shifted, a clarity that arrived before his mind had fully engaged with the day. By the end of the first week, he made a decision he had been unable to make for 2 years, not because the circumstances had changed, but because the clarity to see through them had finally returned. Within the following month, 3 doors opened in the area of his life that he had stopped believing could move. He did not force them. He simply became clear enough to see what was already there and to walk through it. He did not become someone else. He became more fully himself. I want to be straightforward with you about what this costs. That honesty matters more to me than the transaction. You may have tried meditation apps, tools like Calm or Headspace, subscription-based at around $15 a month, addressing general relaxation without targeting the specific gamma state that restores full reception. You may have worked with a therapist, a genuinely valuable resource, at around $150 a session, addressing the psychological layer without touching the neurological one. You may have attended a spiritual retreat at anywhere from $400 to $800 for a weekend, carrying real value but without the capacity to persist beyond the days you were there. Dr. Lake priced the Genius Song at $49 already, significantly less than any of those alternatives for what it targets specifically. But because his goal is access, because he believes the people who need this most are often the ones most stretched by a calling that has not yet broken through, the price for those receiving this specific message is $39. One time, no subscription, no return shipping. It arrives digitally, immediately, directly to your email. And what comes with it? An audio track calibrated specifically for children under the age of 17, designed to reach them before the decline effect has fully taken hold, valued at $19. The original foundational text that the film The Secret was built from, not the simplified film version, but the source material itself, with a practical depth the film never fully captured, valued at $20. A 22-minute guided visualization walking through 4 primary domains: finances, relationships, health, and purpose, valued at $29, and a 5-habit guide drawn from the daily practices of people who have sustained gamma activation consistently over time, valued at $12, $80 in additional tools, included with no extra cost. And here is what the guarantee looks like. If within 90 days the Genius Song has not served you, you contact the team and they return your $39 in full, without returning the tools, without any conditions, without giving back any of the $80 you already received. The position is straightforward. If the tool did not serve you, the least that can be done is return your investment and let you keep what came with it as a gesture for the time you gave. 18,366 people have used the Genius Song before you. Less than 4% of them requested a refund. Think about what that number means, not as a marketing figure, but as an evidence pattern. Over 96% of the people who activated this tool chose to keep it past the guarantee window. That is not a product result. That is a signal worth paying attention to. One thing before you go looking for this anywhere: the $39 access does not exist on Amazon. It is not available through any search result or any third-party listing. Any version you find outside the verified link carries a risk I am not willing to leave unaddressed. The authentic access linked directly to Dr. Lake's team is in the description below and in the pinned comment. That is the only place. If something inside you says this is for you, if something in this message has been pointing toward this specific tool and this specific moment, trust that, the pinned comment and description below. Only if you feel led. Let me bring everything together before we close. You came into this message carrying 6 seasons you had been calling loss, delay, or bad luck. You now know they were warnings, 6 divine communications, each one designed to redirect you toward what you were made for, each one unable to be fully received, not because of your failure, but because of a structural suppression that affected your ability to shema. The decline effect, the gamma frequency, the receiver that was always there, just buried. The 7th warning has arrived, and unlike the first 6, this one was not disguised. You received it. All the way through. The 7-second reception window is your practice going forward. The restoration tool is available for those who feel called toward it, and the version of you walking away from this moment is not the same version that arrived. Before we close, I want to give you something beyond information. Just space. Place one hand on your chest, wherever you are, whatever position you are in, not to perform anything, just to place your awareness on the place that has been carrying 6 seasons of things that could not be fully named. And let what has been held release now, not by force, not by a decision you have to reach for. Just let it know that it is no longer required to carry the weight of those 6 warnings. The grief of the signals that passed without being fully received. The quiet question of what was wrong with you for not being able to hear what you sensed was there. Let all of that release, because you know now, and knowing changes what needs to be carried. You are no longer someone who misses the signal. You are someone who hears, who receives, who responds. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not late. The preparation was long because what it was preparing you for is significant. And you have arrived not at the end of something, but at the beginning of the version of your life that those 6 seasons were always building toward. You were not abandoned. You were not forgotten. You were not skipped. You were being formed. And the formation is complete. It is sealed. The 7th warning has been received. What comes next in your life is not the same as what came before. And chosen one, you are not alone in this. There are thousands of others who walked through 6 hard seasons and arrived at this message alongside you, each finding it in their own time, in their own way, but carried by the same hand. You are part of something larger than your individual story, and the one whose hand has been guiding all of it is not finished. Go in the clarity you came for. Go in the calling you were made for. Go in the knowledge that the 7th was always the one that was meant to land. If something in this message landed somewhere real inside you, if one of those 6 warnings was yours, come to the comments right now and type one word, 7th, just that word, so that every chosen one who finds this message knows they are not the only one who was brought here. If this carried weight, if something shifted, let the like button be your witness. Let it say, I received this. And if something in you knows this conversation is not over, stay in this place. Subscribe, because the next message is already being built for the version of you that is walking out of this one. And that version is ready. You know someone right now who is in their 6th warning. They are calling it a hard season. They don't yet have the language for what they are living. Share this with them, not as advice, as an act of love. The tool in the pinned comment is waiting for those who felt called. Your receiver is worth restoring.